He lost everything and ended up homeless, but when he heroically saved a millionaire's daughter from a fire, his life changed completely. Mike was sitting on the sidewalk, his back against the wall of a building with his legs stretched out in front of him. He wore tattered clothes, a shirt with holes, and torn jeans. By his side, an old plastic cup collected the few coins and bills kind strangers tossed his way. Mike had a tired and sad look on his face as he stared at the ground, hoping someone would lend a hand. People hurried by around him, some completely ignored his presence, while others tossed some money his way. But none of them knew the story behind this man who once had dreams and hopes but now faced the harsh reality of struggling for survival on the streets. Mike used to be a respected mason in town. He worked hard to support his family, his wife Linda and their young daughter Emma. He was deeply in love with them and always did everything in his power to provide a comfortable and happy life for the two of them. However, his life changed drastically when he was called to serve in the Iraq War in 2003. He was sent to a conflict zone near Baghdad, where he fought alongside his platoon. Suddenly, an explosion occurred near them. The blast violently threw him to the ground, and Mike felt a sharp pain in his right shoulder. He tried to get up but couldn't move his arm, and the pain intensified. His comrades helped him up and took him to a safe place. Later, when he was examined by a military doctor, it was discovered that he had suffered a shoulder fracture and a muscle tear that would require emergency surgery to repair the damage. The procedure wasn't easy as there wasn't much equipment for the doctors to perform such a surgery, but they did what they could. After the surgery, Mike spent a long period in rehabilitation, but unfortunately, he never fully recovered from the injury. The shoulder injury limited his ability to perform physically demanding tasks, use heavy tools, carry materials, and even handle his weapon. This led to his being sent back to the United States. When he walked through the door at home, he was immediately embraced by Linda and Emma, who hugged him tightly. "Love, finally you're back. How are you?" Linda asked worriedly. "I'm okay, just a bit tired. It was a long trip back home," Mike replied, smiling at his wife. Little Emma was radiant in the presence of her father. She pulled on his shirt sleeve and handed him a drawing. It was a colorful and messy picture of a house with a smiling yellow sun in the sky and a stick figure man that represented him. "This drawing is incredible, you're a very talented artist," he praised his daughter. The little girl responded with a big smile on her face, saying that it was him coming home. Mike smiled and looked at Linda, but then he saw concern in her eyes. He knew his wife had a tough time while he was away, trying to care for Emma alone and keep the house in order. "Linda, my love, I'm sorry I was away for so long. Let's talk, I want to know how you are," the man said, hugging his wife. "I'm okay, love. Yes, things got a bit complicated after you left, but we received a lot of support from our friends, especially from Ryan, your former boss. But now, I'm very happy you're home and we can be together again," she said with tears of joy in her eyes. Mike felt at peace, finally at home with his wife and daughter. He knew life would still be tough, but he was determined to do everything he could to keep his family together and happy. He was excited to return to work and resume his routine, but over the first week being a mason again, he realized something was wrong. He couldn't work as before, he wasn't up to it. His skills had been completely affected by the injury from the war. Because of this, Mike ended up being fired. He tried looking for work in other fields, but couldn't find anything that would sustain his family, especially since no one wanted to hire a disabled ex-soldier. The bills started piling up, and the financial crisis took over their lives. Then, feeling frustrated and dissatisfied with their situation, Linda left the ex-soldier for his former boss Ryan, who offered her a new start. Charlotte's betrayal would be a hard blow for Mike. He returned home after a long day of job hunting, hoping to find his wife and little girl at home, but the house was empty. At first, he wasn't too worried, thinking maybe the two had gone out for a walk. However, hours passed and there was still no sign of them. He tried calling, but it only went to voicemail. When he finally managed to contact Linda hours later, his wife gave him devastating news. "I'm sorry, but it's already decided. I left you because Ryan can give me the life I want, the life I deserve. I have a chance at a better life. Plus, Emma is with me because it's better for her to grow up with a wealthy and stable stepfather than with a father who can't even take care of his own family." Mike was shocked and devastated. He couldn't believe his wife would betray him in this way, especially after all they had been through together. He begged Linda to reconsider, saying he would do whatever he could to find a better job and provide a better life for them, but the woman was adamant and said she had already made her decision. The poor man spent the following weeks looking for his wife and daughter, visiting friends, family members, and scouring the entire town for clues. In the end, he discovered that they had moved to another town with his former boss. The ex-soldier was desperate and despondent, not knowing what to do or where to go. His wife's betrayal and the loss of his daughter left him alone and aimless. He found himself unable to move on without him and fell into a spiral of despair and sadness. Mike continued trying to find work and stay strong, but he couldn't concentrate, and his physical and mental health began to deteriorate. He soon became unable to pay the rent on his house, and the landlord evicted him without a drop of pity. With nowhere to go, he began living on the streets, seeking refuge in alleys and under bridges, and depending on the help of strangers to survive. He started staying in temporary shelters and looking for food in soup kitchens. He struggled to maintain his dignity and mental sanity, but often felt isolated and abandoned. Life as a beggar was very difficult, and he had no way back and often didn't know where he would sleep. The day started early when he woke up in a shelter for the homeless or in any alley where he had spent the night. The first challenge was finding something to eat. Mike depended on what he earned at soup kitchens or from charity donations to get a meal. Sometimes he rummaged through trash bins looking for leftovers that were still in a condition to be eaten. After eating, the ex-soldier would roam the streets looking for money or items to sell. He spent hours walking with a sign asking for money or volunteering to wash bathrooms in shops and restaurants. Sometimes people gave him some money or food, but many times he was ignored and even humiliated. The life of that poor needy man involved dealing with criminals, other homeless people, and the police. Occasionally, he was robbed or attacked and always felt vulnerable and exposed. At night, Mike sought shelter in public places offered by the government or in abandoned places. He tried to rest in sleeping bags or on pieces of cardboard to stay warm and dry, but often he spent the night awake, afraid of being attacked or mistreated. What a life! The Mason fought daily to survive as a beggar. He battled hunger, cold, loneliness, despair, and often thought about his family and how things could have been different if he hadn't been injured in the war. He found himself remembering sadly the times when his home was full of life, with his happy wife and little daughter running through the hallways, everyone laughing together. Now, he felt as if he had lost everything, as if he really had lost everything that was most important in his life. He felt helpless and alone, with absolutely no one to talk to or ask for help. But despite everything, Mike never lost hope of one day changing his situation. He continued to dream of a better future where he could regain his family and rebuild his life, and he knew that as long as he was alive, there would always be a chance for a new beginning. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, the family of a wealthy businessman lived in a beautiful mansion surrounded by huge and stunning palm trees. William was a great businessman, owner of several successful companies in different sectors. He was known for his intelligence and skill in business and for his strategic vision. He made various investments in stocks, and that's where his fortune came from. The millionaire was a very busy man who spent most of his time in meetings with executives, developing plans and methodologies to increase the profits of his businesses. Despite this, instead of being a repugnant and extremely unpleasant man, he was a respected and very kind leader. Everyone adored him, and he loved contributing resources and time to various social and philanthropic causes, as he knew very well what it was like to live in misery. The businessman grew up in a very poor family that often faced hunger and financial difficulties. This difficult experience shaped his personality and made him a humble and honest person, even after he had become very wealthy. The man always remembered his origins and was grateful for his achievements, working hard and always being respectful to people, regardless of their social or economic position. His humility and compassion were characteristics that helped him succeed in his business and build strong relationships with clients and business partners. He was seen as a model of triumph and innovation in his field, and many aspired to follow in his footsteps. Despite being a very busy person, William always made sure to dedicate time to his 7-year-old daughter Isabella. She was the joy of his life, his precious little girl. The sweet and curious girl had a lot of energy and imagination, loved to play, run, and explore the world around her. She attended a private school and had many friends. The millionaire always encouraged Isabella's interests and passions and always taught her that humility was what helped her achieve her dreams. He and his wife took her on amazing trips and always organized fun activities for them to play together. William was a very dedicated and proud father, and he was very concerned about his daughter's future. He wanted her to have the best education possible and the opportunity to do something significant when she grew up. Everything was going very well in that man's life and his family's, but like any other stock market millionaire, he had his enemies. One day, William received a call from a men's cosmetics company he was planning to buy some shares in. He was very excited about the proposal and scheduled a last-minute meeting. He talked to his wife Chloe, all euphoric. "Love, that company we really wanted made us an offer, 40% love." She was very happy because she always supported her husband and knew how hard he was working and that he had been eyeing that company for a long time. So, they decided to go on the trip together to meet with the shareholders and left little Isabella in the care of their governess, Judith. William said goodbye to his daughter, and he could hardly imagine that this might be the last time they would see each other. Then they left excited. They had the meeting and closed the purchase of 40% of the shares of the cosmetics company. William was so happy, but that excitement soon ended when he called home and no one answered. He and his wife were worried and kept calling, but no one answered. Then a neighbor of the couple contacted them and gave them the worst news those poor parents could receive. "Will, come back here now, your house is on fire, and the firefighters are trying to get Isa and the governess out of there, hurry up." The man was completely paralyzed, unable to react until he managed to explain what had happened to his wife. It was hard, then the two immediately headed back home with their hearts pounding with worry and despair, already imagining the worst. Meanwhile, Mike, the homeless man, wandered the streets begging for alms, as that day had not been a good day. His last meal had been almost 2 days ago, and he was very tired of that life. It had been months, almost a year since he had become a beggar, and every day was an endless struggle. He couldn't take that fight anymore, he was about to give up on everything. That day, he was very humiliated by malicious people who harassed him, spat in his face when he asked for some food and water, and was almost attacked by a dog. He missed his little daughter terribly and was sure that at that point, he would never see her again. Then, wandering thoughtfully, he ended up in a more distant and luxurious neighborhood. That's when he saw smoke coming out of a big and beautiful house and realized there was a commotion there. He quickly ran to see what was happening and saw that the house was engulfed in flames. When he asked someone how the fire had started, William and Chloe arrived home with their car speeding and found a place surrounded by firefighters, police cars, and ambulances, as well as several curious neighbors watching everything in disbelief. "My God," William shouted. "Where's my daughter, sir?" he asked, terrified, to one of the firefighters. "Unfortunately, we're trying to contain the fire, sir. But it's likely that no one has survived in there. The state of the house is precarious, it's not safe to go in there," the officer said. He and his wife Chloe, who was in tears, begged with all their might for them to go in and save their daughter. However, the firefighters said it was too dangerous. That's when they heard a loud explosion. It was one of the gas pipes in the kitchen that had just burst. Everyone was very scared when the glass from the windows shattered on the ground, but they were even more astonished when they heard, "Help!" It was the sound of a child crying. my daughter is still there," the mother screamed, falling to her knees in despair. It turns out that the little girl was sleeping soundly when some men, probably sent by some enemy of William, arrived and started the fire. The flames began to spread through the house, and she woke up to the screams of the governess. When she opened the door to her room, she was terrified. The fire quickly invaded her room, and the girl began to scream and cry. She tried to escape, but the flames and smoke trapped her in a corner of the room. That's when, without even thinking for a second, the ex-soldier simply ran toward the mansion. Everyone was stunned. The firefighters screamed, trying to stop him, even ran after him to stop him, but he kept running and jumped through the flames, entering the house. "Girl, where are you?" he shouted, searching every corner he could pass without getting burned, but everything was chaotic, the ceiling falling, the furniture on fire, everything destroyed. He kept shouting, calling for the little girl, until she heard him. Mike found her scared and confused. He picked her up in his arms and, against all odds, ran dodging that terrifying fire. Before leaving, he found the governess lying under some rubble, but unfortunately, it was too late. Then he ran out of the mansion with the girl in his arms. Everyone outside was euphoric and apprehensive. William's eyes widened every time something collapsed. There was total silence until, "My God," they all shouted, falling into tears and very emotional at seeing that homeless man with the little girl in his arms coming out of the middle of the fire. No one could believe it, but it was a true miracle. The girl's parents ran and hugged her, crying non-stop. Mike watched that scene and, for a moment, was moved, remembering his family. He turned to leave, but then the millionaire shouted at him. He wanted to reward him in every possible way. William said he would pay him a large sum, but the beggar, refusing, said, "I only did it because it was the right thing to do." "But why did you risk your life?" asked the businessman, puzzled. "I had nothing left to lose, but you have the most precious thing in this world, your family." William was very moved by the honesty of that needy man and insisted that he ask for whatever he wanted as a reward, as it was his wish. Then Mike asked for a job, any job. "I'll do anything," he said, briefly recounting his story to the wealthy man, who was impressed by the life of that poor man. Then, with a grateful heart for having saved his daughter, William appointed him as the director of finance of his company and said he would have all the training necessary to perform his function. Mike couldn't believe it and thanked him on his knees. In addition, the businessman decided to create a non-profit organization to help people like Mike get back on their feet and find a new path in their lives. After some time, Mike, now successful, went back to look for his family. Linda almost fell over when she found out everything. She wanted to return to him, but the man rejected her for having betrayed and abandoned him when he needed her most. He kept in touch only with his daughter Emma. The soldier became known for his story and became a symbol of hope and courage for those who were struggling, trying to find their place in the world. What do you think of this story? Do you think they acted right? Leave your comment below to know your opinion. It is very important to us. If you like this exciting story, help us by leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. Thank you very much for watching us and see you in the next story.